This is not a zombie movie, this is a science fiction fantasy horror movie according to IMDb, except there is no horror in this film, so IMDb, you got that one wrong. And welcome to the Ruby Tuesday. My name is Ruben and this is my movie review for Cargo, a Netflix film, not an original, but it's an original in some places. Man, this is a complicated one. It's also not the 2018 movie zombie horror film. It is a science fiction Indian movie, and it's my first science fiction Indian movie. I've seen lots of genres from the Indian community, Indian filmmakers, and I love the style and the cinematography that comes out of India, but this is my first science fiction, so I was eager to see what this was going to be about. After Homo sapiens and the Prime Minister sign the Rakshas Manusha Peace Treaty, demons take over space territory and are now in charge of transitioning dead humans into their new lives. Agent Prasita runs the show at Pushpak 634A. Firstly, I should say, if you can't handle reading subtitles, you're not going to enjoy this, because on Netflix it doesn't have any English dubbing. I'm not sure if that's even covering. I haven't seen any message saying due to the COVID thing that we're not going to get there's delay in the English dubbing. So I think if you can't handle it, you're not going to enjoy this. I also would say on that note that you do have to read quite quickly at times, which can be quite frustrating, because what we're watching on screen is a very visual story. The aesthetics and the look of the film is very grand in nature, although most of the film is very, I guess, unique, personal, close shots, like so medium range sci-fi. Think Space Odyssey. The spacecraft itself internally looks so old, and that's because we have our protagonist who's been there for 75 years. There's this weird fantasy realm that's, like I mentioned with the treaty in the synopsis. So we have demons that are transitioning people that die, and from that moment they arrive on a spaceship in space. They have their memories wiped. They get told this is what's happened to them, and then they've got to send them on their way to their next journey, wherever they go on from there. I guess the algorithm decides that in the computer. But all the space mechanics, all the space machines inside of the spaceship look so old. There's like analog screens, there's push buttons, no digital this, that. There's one couple of digital screens, but they also look very old and clunky. But I feel like that gives it a real world, tangible feeling. It reminds me of like Thunderbirds, again, Space Odyssey.
It can only be attributable to human error.
It's less about technology, but more like making the audience feel like they're there, and I really like that. Also felt like there's massive creativity in the shots that we see from scene to scene. There are ways of making you feel what they need you to feel, and one of the main themes is loneliness, and so we get this these ads about, you know, some detective loneliness interspliced in between the main story, and it's basically about this one guy coming out of his shell, learning how to be, I would say, human, having human characteristics, or just learning what it's like not to be alone anymore. So he gets an apprentice that comes up there to space with him. It seems like every demon has a power of sort, and I'll leave you to discover what those are and how those relate to the storyline. But there's a lot of lore that you kind of have to just piece together for yourself through the conversations that are having. The biggest issue I have with this film is that it's very long. It feels very long, and that's not something that you really want in a space story that seems like it's picking on so many themes. So for example, Space Odyssey is a bit I guess it has a mixture. I know lots of people that don't like it and find it very boring, and I know lots of people that love it and class it as one of the best space films of all time, a Stanley Kubrick genius film.
I am putting myself to the fullest possible use.
And so I feel like that might be the issue here as well. I've already seen some of the Rotten Tomatoes. It's got, I think, only 5 reviews so far. And of those 5, it's on 40%. I think 2 of them have really enjoyed it, said it's a really interesting piece of work. 3 of them have said that it's a conundrum of ideas, of really fantastic ideas that is all over the place. And I would say that is the case here, although for the majority of the film, I really enjoyed it. I thought the protagonists were very good on screen with each other. I like the ideas that they have about, you know, this whole society of demons that are trying to help people transition. It's an ultimately very lonely film. It's also a very sad film as we see people at the end of their lives. So the science fiction is almost takes a back seat, even though we're in space and we're experiencing what they're experiencing. But it's more like the monotonous day in and day out life of this guy, this demon who has to help people on their way into the next journey.
वो यहाँ आते हैं मिस्टर केसी सरकार.
And it's not until the latter minutes of the end of the film do we really find out what is all going on, where people go. That kind of question, it leads you to kind of think about for yourself, and you kind of have to puzzle piece together this story. Because that's not what it's really about. It's more on, character defined moments, which I found very interesting. I kind of would have liked a bit more backstory, considering how much time they had to play about with, because it feels so slow, drawn out in certain sequences. It's very cinematic in the scopes of what they're trying to show within screen. There isn't that much dialogue, but when it is, it's very fast-paced reading for me in English, but the dialogue also doesn't explain what's going on. It's more like they're just experiencing going to work together and this is their job. But in amongst that, when things go wrong is when the story gets exciting, or when they don't have the same ideals, because one is kind of a fish out of water. One is from the wrong time now. This demon has lived in space for 75 years and has no idea what's actually happening with humans now, because there's a whole generation that's almost gone through a cycle of change. And so you have the assistant and the guy that's been up there for 75 years, and they meet and they have different ways of wanting to change things up, and that makes it interesting. I really like the idea of post-death transition services. The way they show it, the way you get to see a little bit of the stories of the people that arrive up in space, I thought was very interesting. It gives it a bit more heart when you need it, especially when you have this one character who seemingly has no emotional characteristics. But at the end of the day, it's more about the journey and discovery of how not to be lonely, I think, is the main theme. And then it touches on many others. And I do feel like it's a bit all over the place, and I do feel like it is too long. I think it could have been an hour and a half easily. You could have shaved half an hour off this. At the same time, I think this film has been very brave. It's very experimental cinema. It's been to some festivals, which I think it did fairly well at. And I'm really hoping that more people see this, because I do love seeing a worldwide cinema's take on ideas about the afterlife and science fiction, and having those two elements in together makes for a very provocative and interesting story to tell. I love the way the director has framed the shots, the way he's told the story within it. I do feel like, personally, I would have scrapped a bit of the story, but maybe the story is all there for you to tell. If you watch it multiple times over, you may see more in it. I feel like it's like that sort of film. Even me slightly comparing it to A Space Odyssey gives this film props. If it reminds you of that, it has similar elements. It's not nearly as good as that, let me say that, but it definitely reminds me of certain moments like that. I really love the tactile feeling, the analog stuff, because it's old. It puts you in the seat. It helps you feel like you're there in space. It's a very interesting, different film that I recommend watching if you can handle the slow pacing of the film. Apart from that, the tone is great, the color palette is awesome, the acting is good, and the score is fantastic. Really helps to set the mood of what the film is going for. But you have to give it time to develop. Thanks so much for watching this review. Do chat to me in the comments below. Had you heard of this one? Are you going to give it a go? What is your favorite? What is the best science fiction movie you've ever seen? Or at least your top 3. I'd love to know. Don't forget, we have a Discord server, so do chat to us there. Join us. I'll leave in the description how you can find us. The link should be there. And obviously we have a cornucopia of other social media places for you to visit. Twitter, Facebook, Instagram. We're everywhere. Thanks so much for watching this, but most of all, until next time, remember, live long and Tuesday.